Okay, we've had a lot of people say that you just need to try it, Drew. As soon as you get your hands on the foldable, then you'll realize the potential. Once you actually start using this thing in the flesh, then you'll fall in love with it. Then you'll be wanting Apple to make a foldable as soon as possible. And I've been using it now. I unboxed it over a week ago, and it's been in my pocket. I've been unfolding and refolding it back and forth. If you were expecting the Apple sheep to have some type of epiphany or some type of realization that, oh, now that I'm using it, I'm starting to realize the potential. It didn't happen. I'm sorry. If that's what you were looking forward to, that's not what this video is going to be. I was kind of hoping I would have some type of eye-opening experience. But no, the long short of it is the folding part is amazing and interesting, but it gets old very quickly. Let's begin. A lot of people are going to review the Z Flip and bring up things like the insane high price point, but foldables are the future. It's just the price is too high or the durability issues are too great right now and we need to wait till later. So you'll probably get a bunch of YouTubers telling you that the Z Flip is awesome, just want to wait a couple more years for them to refine it. So given I'm aware of that, I'm going to review the Z Flip with a few imaginary things in mind. I know this is weird, this is a little bit different, but I'm going to review the Z Flip as if it costed half as much as it actually does. So instead of it being $1,400, let's pretend it's $700. I don't care about the $1,380, it's $1,400. Also, I'm gonna pretend there are no durability issues with the Z Flip. Yes, I'm aware. That's not the truth. The display can be scratched with a fingernail, but I don't even want to talk about that in today's video. I just want to imagine, okay, you know what? They used glass on the display. It works fine. There's absolutely no crease or anything like that. The display does not scratch with a fingernail. It's just as strong as a traditional smartphone glass. And it's $700, okay? So we're ignoring the most common criticisms of the Z Flip. Now, moving from there, I want to tell you what my experience was with it. So when I first opened the thing, I was very, very curious about how long the display is able to stay on. You know, it's fascinating that you can have a device that we've been used to using for so many years, except now, of course, it can rotate. The display is able to just fold up and fit in your pocket for the sake of mobility, I guess. I've seen many people use the argument that the big advantage to the clamshell foldable is that it will fit in pockets easier, but showcasing like how a traditional phone looks in my right pocket and how the Z Flip looks in my left, it doesn't make that big a difference, to be honest with you. I mean, the physical volume of the Z Flip doesn't really change that much. It just gets thicker and not as long, and the weight also does not change as well. So it's not like for the sake of mobility that much really changes. I guess that there's an argument out there that pants with much shorter pockets, which is traditional in women's clothing, does not support the larger and larger phones that people are buying these days, but I let my wife try this for a second and put it in her pocket, and it didn't really save that much space either, because, I mean, here's the biggest iPhone we have, the 11 Pro Max, alongside the Z Flip. It's about half the size, but also a lot thicker, and a lot of girls' pockets are basically useless given how small they are, and this still has a hard time fitting in those pockets. So I'm definitely not considering that as a selling point, because it's not a one-size-fits-all, like, well, this will clearly fit in all those short pockets, because it doesn't. Maybe some occasional it will fit better than others, but definitely not all of them. And also, girls have kind of moved on from trying to keep phones in their pockets at this point because they have a purse. They usually keep their phones in that anyway. And regardless, I don't think that's a big enough selling point for a phone for people to be willing to purchase one, just the sake of, oh, it saves a little bit of room in the pocket sometimes, but it is going to pop out and bulge a little bit more than a traditional phone. So from a mobility standpoint and just being more portable, I guess maybe. But here's the main concern I had with the Z Flip. This is something that I wasn't really anticipating was going to be as big of an issue as it was. The fact that every single time I had to pull this thing out of my pocket, I had to open the thing and then put my finger on the fingerprint reader, or have to wait till the flip was all the way here for it to see my face and then unlock. And at first it was very futuristic, right? Because I'm not used to doing that with my phone. In fact, I never even owned a flip phone. My first actual phone was an iPhone 5. I didn't have some dumb phone before that. So transitioning from a phone that I just take out of my pocket and unlock to a phone that I now take out of my pocket and unfold, pretty cool. I love showing it off to people and catching their reactions. You know, everybody who I've showed it to, between friends and family who don't follow tech stuff at all, did not even know foldables were a thing. They would look at this thing and just go, whoa, that's so weird, that's so interesting. And it definitely holds their interest for a couple of minutes, but then afterwards, you know, they just, okay, I think I'm done with it now. And that's kind of how my experience experience was with it. At first, it was like, whoa, okay, phone that can fold and unfold. This is so weird. But after a while, the phone just becomes your regular phone again. And then I start realizing that every time I take this thing out of my pocket, I have to unfold it with the thumb. Okay, now I'm done with it. I gotta fold it back up, put it in. Now I take it out, unfold it again. And pushing against the resistance of that hinge every single time does start to get old, especially when you're used to just taking out a traditional phone and I swipe to unlock and I'm done, or I can just check my notifications. Whereas the tiny display on the outside of the Z Flip, a lot of people look at that as a cool, nifty perk of foldables, but my point is, like, they have to put that there, because if they didn't put that there, the foldable would be even more pointless, because you couldn't see, you know, what the battery of your phone was, you couldn't see what notifications you have, except with this thing, it'll just tell you which apps are giving you notifications. It's not going to tell you what those notifications are. And yes, it is kind of nifty that it turns into a camera viewfinder for the rear-facing camera, but it's such a squished and very, very narrow display that you can't really see what's in or out of the photo. You can just kind of get a general idea, and other phones have already combated this issue by having one display, so that when you get notifications or when you put the phone on the charger, you can see everything, gives you all that battery info, or when you get a notification, you can actually read the text and reply to it from the lock screen. So the external display is kind of a must on clamshell foldables. Otherwise, the whole thing becomes very, very pointless to fold up, in which case you better just leave it unfolded all the time. But if you're leaving it unfolded all the time, why buy a foldable in the first place? So the next thing that really irked me about the Z Flip was the aspect ratio. It's a very, very tall phone, and one-handed use is incredibly difficult with a display this high, especially when the buttons are as high as they are on the Flip. And I was definitely having to activate one-handed mode a lot on the Z Flip, given how tall it is, even though it's narrower than the 11 Pro Max. I don't know why they have to make the display, like, so tall. When you're watching YouTube videos, there's giant black bars on the side, and even when you try to punch in, it crops out way more than traditional smartphones do. So, like, I'm okay with displays getting a little bit taller, but in my opinion, this is taking it a little too far. I think they could have gone shorter with this, especially if the argument is mobility, the fact that you can fold it up and store it in smaller places. Then don't make a 6.7-inch display. This thing's very hard to use with one hand and very, very awkward for reaching things in the top left corner especially. So definitely wish they could have made it smaller. When it comes to the specs of this thing, it's okay. The fact that it's a $700 phone, remember, it only has one speaker, you know, it's not stereo, is kind of off-putting, because ever since 2016 I've been used to my phones having stereo speakers, so to finally go back to just one speaker on one side makes the YouTube watching experience much more dumbed down than it used to be. It's kind of annoying when you're watching a video and all the sound's coming from one side of the phone, or when you're holding it in a particular way, if you cover up that speaker, you basically lose all audio. The cameras on it are okay. I would say that they're somewhat comparable to the also $700 iPhone 11. That has an ultra-wide and a regular on the back, and that can do 4K at 60. This can pretty much do the same thing. I personally think that smartphone camera tests are over-exaggerated these days, given all flagship smartphones can take decent pictures that can get the job done if you're taking pictures or videos on a phone. So I don't want to focus too much on camera quality with the Z Flip, because it's just fine. It's not groundbreaking. And if we really, really want to talk about Samsung's camera quality, let's save that for the S20 Ultra. I'll do that later. The display quality is also up to typical Samsung specs. You know, I can't really see pixels. Some people thought that there would be a pixel density issue with the Z Flip. I don't see that problem at all. It's a very rich display. It's very sharp as well, and the brightness holds up okay. Outdoors, not great, but decent enough. And the battery life is definitely not as great as it is on something like an iPhone 11. The screen on time definitely can't reach other $700 phones, so you'll definitely have to charge it more often. But hey, I mean, the whole thing folds, so you can have that over other people, but it does come at a cost to a lot of the specs. In regards to build quality, I was pleasantly surprised. You know, when I took it out of the box, I was expecting it to feel fairly plastic and cheap and have a lot of cracks and pops when using it, but it's a surprisingly premium feeling device. The metal on the outside is very well polished. Even when unfolded and applying pressure on the sides and stuff, I don't get cracks, I don't get pops. The haptic feedback on this thing is very satisfying as well. I enjoy that part of the keyboard experience. And I also think Samsung did a great job with this little hinge on the back, because I was really concerned when getting the Z Flip that I was going to pinch my fingers when unfolding it, and they've somehow made the edges of it so soft that you don't have to worry about that. So when unfolding the device, like, it doesn't pinch your skin, which I thought was going to be a big problem, and it doesn't pinch at all. And debris doesn't appear to be getting in there at all, even though I'm very flaky as a guy with psoriasis. I haven't had any issues with durability at all. The display has not been damaged in any way. And I'm also a huge fan that this is one of the first Samsung products device with a single size bezel all the way around. We don't even have a notch. I get that we have a camera hole, which is pretty much the same thing, but still a lot smaller than most notches, and having one size bezel all the way around, that's really satisfying. That's pretty neat. I like not having an edge display because those always bothered me in the past. They would distort video a little bit and I would end up setting off the display accidentally. So I prefer just having flat display. Curved corners are okay, just not curved edges. I enjoy that it charges via USB-C, obviously, big fan of that. And overall though, I think it's a phone with one big gimmick. You know, outside of the fact that it folds, it's pretty average in every other metric. The only outstanding part about it that everyone's talking about, of course, is the folding mechanism, which in my opinion, after a week of use, just like those people I originally showed it to, it blows their minds for about 30 seconds. And then you're like, okay, moving on, because there's not a huge advantage to having a device that can fold up like this. I think that a lot of YouTube channels and a lot of people that review smartphones for a living are going to say that they love this thing and they can see how it's going to be the future and they really, really like the Z Flip, but I think that's because they review smartphones for a living. They're buying phones and swapping them out with other ones like several times a quarter every single year. They're used to just same old glass sandwich, same old glass sandwich. So as soon as they find something that does anything remotely different from what all these other smartphones have been doing, it's amazing and that impresses them. But I think there's a difference between being impressed by technology and recommending it to people, saying like, hey, you're looking for a phone that you're going to hold on to for like the next 2 to 3 years. This is what you should spend your hard-earned money on. And that's where I have a hard time recommending the Z Flip, because the unfolding part is really, really cool from a tech YouTuber perspective. As someone who talks about smartphones for a living and reviews lots of different models, to find one that is out of the ordinary, that's impressive. But that folding feature, in my opinion, is not adding enough to the experience, because after a week you're just going to be using it as your normal phone. You're not even going to think about the fact that it folds, and that folding isn't helping very much. It fits in your pocket a little bit differently. If anything, it's a little bit more inconvenient, because when folded up, it sits down at the bottom portion of my pocket, so I'm finding myself having to dig down in my pocket further than previous times with my iPhone, because since it's longer, you know, you can just grab the part that's closest to the top of your pocket and pull it out. I found that actually to be a lot easier than this because it falls so far down there. So for that reason alone, I would recommend phones with better battery lives or better resale value or better software support, because having gone back to Android for the first time in a while, there's still a lot of apps that are not as optimized and annoying to use for me compared to iOS. This isn't an iOS versus Android video, I get that, but my point is, after using a folding phone for a while, I'm not seeing the benefits, and once again, we go back to square one in my main issue with foldables from the very beginning. Why? Why do we need this? What is the point? Just being able to prop it up on a desk so that you can take like video calls with the phone standing itself up. It's like, just get a pop socket, or just most people just prop their phone up against a plant or a wall or something. It's like, you don't need to redesign the entire structure of the phone just so you can prop it up and see people without holding it. It's a little bit nifty, but you know, that's kind of the definition of a gimmick. It's like, oh, that's kind of neat, but is it something that everybody needs to have on their phone? And is this the future of where all smartphones are going to eventually end up? I'm sorry, no. I don't think so. But I will fully admit that I am not the YouTuber that's been right about everything in the past. There's lots of up-and-coming market trends that I've predicted would fail or succeed, and sometimes I've been wrong, and other times I've been right. So you don't have to go back and find those videos. I'll just tell you what they are now. Originally, if you go back and watch some of my way early videos, you will see that I did not think smart speakers were going to be a very popular thing. Back when Amazon first unveiled the Echo device, I was like, that seems kind of gimmicky. I don't think that will really catch on. I was wrong about that. That really did catch on. Now all companies are making all kinds of smart speakers and stuff like that. So that was something I was wrong about. Something I would consider myself fairly right about was saying that VR headsets were never going to become a mainstream thing. They were always going to be a niche market. Some people were going to really enjoy it, but it was never going to be something you saw everybody doing. It was never going to be as popular as traditional computers, laptops, and phones, which, as we've seen VR age, it's kind of turned out that way. Yes, they found some cheaper ways of doing it, but in the end, you know, Google canceled their Daydream headset idea, and VR headsets are still around, but the demographic for them is somewhat small, and it never really grew to the huge community that they were expecting it to. So I could be wrong about foldables. Maybe this is the next big thing, and maybe this is where all smartphones are headed, but after using one now regularly, I can say that I don't think this is going to be it. I think it's going to be a small portion of the market for a certain amount of time, but eventually companies are just not going to see enough demand for it. They're not going to put much time or effort into them, and they'll be cool, of course, because we're not used to seeing market-leading displays do that, but functionally, they're not going to be very helpful, and the consumer's not going to deem them as worth it. So I just reviewed the Galaxy Z Flip, and at no point in this review did I use the argument that since it's $1,400, you shouldn't buy it, and I never said that because it's fragile or because you can scratch this display with a fingernail, that's a reason to skip out on this thing. And the reason I did that is because I want you guys to realize I don't think foldables are the future, and it's not a matter of technology improving. It's not a matter of the displays getting more durable or the price dropping. So even reviewing this thing as if it was $700, I still wouldn't recommend it to people. And that's denying reality, because we all know this is $1,400 and there are lots of durability concerns with it. So hence why I don't recommend the Z Flip. And when it comes to more like tablet style foldables, I feel like we should just wait until I have one, and then I'll review that and give you my feedback after using those type of foldables for a week and getting comfortable with it. But at this point, it's still pretty difficult to get your hands on one. So when it comes to clamshell foldables, I don't think this is it. It's going to remain a gimmick. It's going to remain a small niche of the market. It's not the future of smartphones. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.